In this demonstration, we are going to work through the access control rules in CluedIn. CluedIn has multiple layers of security and access control, and they start at the data source level, and then we can apply extra layers of access control rules to restrict down to the cell level. What we mean by cell is that we can actually restrict data to even one individual record and one property or one or many properties on those records as well. So very granular access control. To start, we're going to set up an extra user and we are going to onboard some data where we give them access to one of the assets and we deny access to the other asset. So let's set up some configuration. I'm going to start by heading to user management. Now I'm running this locally and I don't have my single sign-on enabled. So I'm going to do it the non-single sign-on way. If you are using single sign-on, then in fact, you would add your users through your Azure Active Directory and you would skip this step. But let's show if we are inviting. So I'm going to invite a, let's just say user at demo.com. And this is going to send an email. And I'm just going to, on another screen, I'm just going to access this email and I'm going to log this person in. So let me bring that over here and I'm just going to paste in that link. And let's go here. And it's going to ask me to put in a password for this. So I'm just going to put in a password and agree to the terms and conditions and then sign up. So with that in place, I should be able to say user at demo.com, put my password in, and I'm now logged in as this user. So I have a logged in user called user, and I have in another active session, I have the administrator. Okay, let's start off by taking a look at the actual user. We can see that they don't necessarily have the same functions as the administrator. So if I went to search, I should be able to see the users within the system and the account. But as I add data in, you'll see this person doesn't have access to actually see the data itself. So it's an opt-in control. So let's head over and I'm going to onboard some data. So let's take something like let's take data and let's take maybe this employee's file. Okay. So this sounds like something that should probably be sensitive for HR. So I'm going to put it into a folder called HR, and we're going to map this data into the CluedIn platform. So here we see a preview of the data, and if we head over to our user, they don't actually have access to see the same types of functionality. So they won't be able to see that employee data, and if they go to search, that data is not in the platform yet. And the same thing for the administrator. The data is actually not in the platform, it's in its staging environment. It needs to be mapped and processed in. So far, we don't have the employee records in, but we're going to map this data. So let's call this an employee. Let's set an appropriate icon. And we're going to create a vocabulary called employee. It's going to create that shell for me. I'm just going to accept the default and move on. Okay, so we see this nice lineage here that's telling me what the data came in as and what it's going to be called in the MDM system. You can see a couple of things. It's kind of standardized in casing. It's got rid of kind of things like underscores and hyphens and things like this. It retains all of this information so we can get it back if we need it later. But for right now, this is much easier to read and to look at. So for the name of the entity, I'm going to choose the full name instead of just showing the first name. And we can see that it's automatically detected that the ID and the email can both be used as unique ways to refer to these employees. So it's done a good job there. Hence, I'm going to finish and I'm going to process this data into the platform. Okay, so it's probably of no surprise that when I'm logged in as the administrator, I get to see the employee data, but if I head over to this user and I run my search, I don't get to see anything, right? So I am denied by default. There are a couple of things I need to do to opt these users into the records. So let's go back and do that. Now, to set this up in a kind of a governed manner, I am going to go over and I'm going to create a brand new role. And this role is called HR. The description is that this is for data related to data. So this is a role that provides the people team with access to HR related data and functions. So they can do, they might be able to fix duplicate records on employee data. Here, I'm going to restrict pretty much everything that this person can do in regards to functionality. So they'll be able to browse the records they have access to, but they won't actually be able to do anything with it. So this is a very kind of closed down account. Let's go ahead and add our user into this role. And the reason why is that when we're setting up access control, we probably want to do this at the role level instead of the user level. Now, we support both, but in this case, I'm going to do it at the role level. So if we head to our file, here we get to see the permissions. We can either set permissions at a user level or a role level. I'm going to choose the role, and we're going to choose that HR role that we just created. Okay, so now if we head over to our search and we refresh, we can see that this user can see the records itself. Okay, but if we head into the actual assets, we can see that the limited details warning is shown. And that's that if we head to the properties, I actually don't really get to see anything but the name of the record. So we've been granted access to this data, but now we need to opt into the actual data itself. This is where we need to create our access control rules. Let's head over, click access control, and create a brand new role for employee data. Here is where I get the fine-grained ability to filter exactly how and what data I would like to apply this security for. Let's keep something high level for now. I'm going to say where the type of data equals to that employee data. Then the action, and let's just say grant access, is to grant access to that HR team. This can also be done at a user level as well. So for example, in this case, I might actually just want to say, hey, let's just do this for the user. And this is where I get to opt into what values this person actually gets to see. So let's just say they get to see the email, they get to see the full name, and finally they get to see the first. And let's add that action and let's activate this and save. You can see that the access control rules are applied in real time. So they can also be revoked in real time as well. So now if we head over to our record and head to properties, you can still see I have limited details, but I do have now access to be able to see those specific properties. Now imagine a case where we have a property like job title or department. And we might want to say, hey, there's different read permissions for those in the sales department as there is for the marketing department. You can gather that that's really about the filter and the condition that you have here. So for example, let's just, we can just take an example based off the data that we have. So let's take employee dot, we can see, okay, we've got job, we've got email. So let's say this, And we could say where the job title begins with the letter S, and save this. So right now, this is only going to apply and grant access to those 3 properties for that HR role to those employee records that have a job title starting with S. And you can build up and have very granular rules. We can filter this down to by record. So, for example, we might add another rule that's going through the properties, and we might say, hey, records created after this date or only created before this date. One of the popular ones is actually only access to the data that came from that employees.csv file. So you can see how you can be very granular in setting up access control within the CluedIn platform.